So I've just been invited to some speech at some university, and it says hosted valet only. And that's the only thing it says, like dress code doesn't have that, doesn't have ticket price, doesn't have anything. It just says hosted valet only. I have no idea what that even means. Does that mean only the host gets their jacket brushed by some, Downton Abbey guy? Does that mean hosted valet? There's a host that's like, what does that mean?
I'm trying to figure this out because I don't know. I've never heard of it.
I am not qualified to go to this thing.
The only thing I think what it's saying is there's no normal parking. So, like, the only option you have is a hosted valet.
When why don't they say just that? Why don't they just say you can't park anywhere? You're going to have to give your key. Bring $20. You're going to have to give that guy something going in and something going out.
I think because the first one's shorter. Hosted valet only.
But nobody knows
all
what
those
that
nice
means.
things.
Nobody knows what that means. Nobody knows it. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have taken the time to look it up. I would have just been like, I don't know what hosted valet means.
I just parked my car here in the middle of the road.
What do you mean they towed me away? This is a reason not to go to that one. Delete on that invitation.
Because they're going to park your car for you?
No, because if they say that about parking, you think you're going to understand a damn thing they're saying as they debate? Nope.
No. It's going to be way too smart for you.
Way too smart
That
for
might
me.
be what the actual point of it is.
It might be.
Right. They don't want idiots that don't know what hosted valet only means at their speech.
And they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's, survival of the fittest. It's natural selection. I'm selecting out.
Right.
Okay, I'm selecting out.
It didn't work out for you.
No.
You've gone extinct.
That's
You're the
exactly
dodo
right.
bird of the speech. Congratulations.
Thank you. By the way, we have an incredible podcast with General Michael Flynn. You can find that podcast tomorrow, wherever you get your podcast, or you can get it right now at Blaze TV. This is a wide-ranging interview and fascinating. General Michael Flynn podcast at blazetv.com/Glenn.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Doctor?
Dr. Locke!
Take a journey through time and space with some of your favorite doctors. From William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton to Tom Baker and John Pertwee. Tune in and discover their adventures on the classic Doctor Who channel. Available now for free on Pluto TV.
$200 to start with.
These shows
Ready to play?
Oh, yeah.
are primed
Boy, am I getting out of her way.
for prime time.
Are you ready to have a go at it?
I'm ready.
And go!
From classic concentration
Feel lucky today.
to match game Hollywood Squares hour.
Right to agree.
Steve Dace is just a great commentator and does a very, very different show than what you normally hear on talk radio. Has just a really good sense of what is important and why it's important, especially eternally. He's the host of the Blaze TV show, The Steve Dace Show, and the author of a great book, The Faucian Bargain. He's got a bonus chapter of the Faucian Bargain, the Faucian Booster. And I want to talk to him about that. He's got a lot to say about the booster shots and the actual facts. And, I mean, if you want to, rely on science and look at the science, let's look at the numbers. Steve Dace in 60 seconds. Blaze TV host, Steve Dace Show, author of The Faucian Bargain. Welcome, Steve. How are you?
Good morning, brother. How you been?
I'm good. So, Steve, I'm doing a 5-night special, I think next month, on some investigation that we've been doing. In fact, we had earlier this week somebody had hacked into our system of one of our producers and was going through all of our confidential files preparing for this show on Dr. Fauci and COVID. And Google couldn't even figure out who was in the Google Docs looking at all of that stuff. We have taken everything and gone offline with all of it while we produce this show. There's a lot of really, really bad things that have been going on with it. Tell me about the bonus chapter, the Faucian booster.
Well, if you read Fauci and Bargain, we left off right when the vaccines were being rolled out, Glenn. And the initial data in real time, particularly for high risk in the elderly with the Alpha variant, the initial data was actually very promising. And so we just figured, let's just end the book here. And then if this becomes an issue of mandates, we can pick up the conversation later. And as it has been the pattern of this entire scamdemic, the less something works, the more they want to mandate it. And so when the vaccines were performing very well, hey, back to normal, take your masks off, everything else. It's the minute that the Delta variant arrived and we began to see the efficacy, particularly from a transmission standpoint, of these therapeutics just completely collapse, that now suddenly they want to impose them on everyone. You have the Biden administration overruling the 16-2 vote by the FDA, including 2 resignations in opposition to third boosters. Israel's doing third boosters. Canada just bought 4 years worth of boosters from Pfizer, as a matter of fact. And Glenn, if I had gone online and said in February, March, April, or May that I don't think that these vaccines will hold up en masse against transmission and you're all going to need a third booster by the end of the year, I'd have been suspended, if not banned, from Twitter or Facebook for saying that. And yet here we are. And so that's why we decided we had to do this bonus chapter to try to equip people with Fauci and booster to push back on vaccine mandates right now while the iron is hot.
Okay, let me go through some of your tweets here. According to the WHO's dashboard, the United States had 156% more COVID cases and 148% higher deaths than the third week of September this year compared to 2020. No one was vaccinated in September 2020. 75% of adults have at least had one vaccine dosed September 2021. Tell me what this means.
This is, I had a lefty journalist, and I use that in quotation marks, ask me on Twitter, how many people that have been banned from YouTube do we quote in Fauci and Booster? These are people I've never even heard of, okay? Although getting banned from YouTube nowadays, frankly, makes me want to find them. But I just use WHO, World Health Organization, and CDC data for the majority of our 40 footnotes in this 22-page chapter. And if you look at the weekly breakouts from the World Health Organization, we had lower natural immunity, no one vaccinated last September. We have up to 80% of people, according to CDC, have some immunity for COVID-19 between natural immunity and vaccinations. 75% have been given at least one dose. We have 2/3 of adults that have received both doses. Over 80% of seniors in America have been given both doses. And yet we're sitting here with 156% more cases and 148% more deaths. And this is a week where things should be calmed down. We're on the tail end of the Sunbelt wave. You've got a bit of a lull before we head into the winter wave and the seasonality where I live in the north. And yet you look at a state like Vermont right now, Glenn, it's the most vaccinated state in the union. They have an all-time high for cases right now. Seasonality doesn't even begin for them until this weekend. Maine is also a top 3 vaccinated state. They've got an all-time high for ICU patients right now. Connecticut's reporting, again, out of season, 1/3 of its hospitalizations are fully vaccinated. We haven't even hit the seasonality. That's the number one driver of this. The number one population driver of COVID all over the world is seasonality. We have not even hit the seasonality in the north, and already in Vermont and Maine and Connecticut, 3 of the most vaccinated states you are seeing trend lines that really you ought to be seeing in January. So what in the world is January going to look like?
So what are you suggesting here? That the vaccine makes things worse?
What I'm suggesting is something is not right. They're not telling us something. Something isn't right. This is a bait and switch. The initial vaccine data up against the Alpha variants was very, very strong, especially from a therapeutic. And now that it has collapsed on August 5th, on CNN of all places, where truth doesn't even go to die. It doesn't exist, okay? The director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, went on Wolf Blitzer and admitted that these vaccines no longer stop transmission. So that would seem to indicate then if the whole argument over masks last year was wear a mask doesn't protect you but somebody else, which that was a lie, but that was the argument, right? Well, that's actually the argument now for these therapeutics. They are a therapeutic like the flu vaccine. You are if you get involved in this vaccination program, unless they come up with a true vaccine, a true immunization, a Salkian level achievement, understand that you are signing yourself up for an ongoing human experiment of being injected and re-injected with the nanoparticles of this experimental technology that no one invested in prior to 2008. And Moderna was 0 for 9 in bringing products to market until COVID. You're part of this experiment ongoing. Now, you still may decide that given the risk of COVID for you and how the variants seem to be getting worse, you may still decide that that's worth the gamble, but you should be informed of that choice. And if these things, Glenn, do not stymie transmission, which they do not, okay, if they don't stymie transmission, then there is simply no medical or ethical rationale for mandating them on people whatsoever, because this isn't like that if you're any more of a super spreader than someone who is. There was a study that came out from the state of Wisconsin's Department of Health just a week ago. Frankly, I found it courtesy of our CEO, Tyler Carden. He sent it to me. 2 of the largest counties in Wisconsin did a study, and what they found is that the viral load of people who tested positive with COVID vaccinated was actually slightly higher than those who tested positive for COVID unvaccinated. Again, there is no moral or ethical justification for mandating these things before we even get to the constitutional question.
So, Steve, what you're saying is this is not a vaccine; it's a therapeutic at best, and maybe something that once you start, you've got to continue to take.
Like the flu shot, you have to get a new one every year for the new strain, Glenn.
Okay. All right. But there are some things, and we keep, if we're into therapeutics, we keep finding therapeutics that are cheap. Hydroxychloroquine is a very good therapeutic. It's not going to stop it, but it will help you if you have it. It may stop you from getting it. It did me. Once I stopped taking it, that's when I got COVID. And I was taking it. My whole family had COVID. I mean, I was like, oh, I know you got snot all over your face, but kiss me, sweetheart. I mean, I wanted to get it out, so I had the natural immunity. But I was taking hydroxychloroquine. That worked. Ivermectin, it works. Those are cheap. And my sister was asking her doctor for hydroxychloroquine in Washington State, and he would not prescribe it. He wouldn't prescribe it. He wouldn't prescribe ivermectin either. These are drugs that have been used for a long, long time.
Glenn, ivermectin won the Nobel Prize in 2015. It is not horse paste. That's a lie. We have a lot of antibiotics that we repurpose for animal usage nowadays. For example, ever had a burger at McDonald's or Burger King? Enjoy your grilled or fried antibiotics because you had some right there. Okay, that's a complete and total lie. This drug has literally saved and been taken by or saved hundreds of millions of people since 2015. Its manufacturer, Merck, who, by the way, was one of the first companies to jump in on President Trump's Operation Warp Speed and then backed out when they were not confident in their human trial data that they could come up with a mRNA vaccine that was efficacious enough to justify the side effects. So they never came up with one, even though they're arguably the most successful pharma company in the country. All right. They are the creators of ivermectin. They were part of winning a Nobel Prize for this back in 2015. And back in February, they actually put out a paper trying to discredit their own drug from people using it. And now we find out today they've signed a massive contract with the feds to get emergency authorization for an oral drug that sounds a heck of a lot like hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. And oh, by the way, though, this one, the government's going to pay them $70 a pill. I could go on goodrx.com right now, and with a Walgreens coupon, I could get 58 cents per pill ivermectin. If you do the math, that is 11,900% profit per pill, Glenn, per pill for Merck. Okay.
How close is it to ivermectin?
Hate the game, not the player. How do we know? Here's the thing. All the data that we have gotten so far have all been internal. Let me show you something that just made me laugh out loud last week. Remdesivir, the people at Gilead, which makes remdesivir, tried to come out with a study to show the government that they are a hugely successful product in stopping people from requiring hospitalization for COVID. Now, back in July, one of the best public university hospitals in the country is an hour down the road from where I live at the University of Iowa. They did a live real-time study of remdesivir in July, published the results. They found that when it's not causing renal failure, it either doesn't work, and in many cases, it prolongs hospital usage. But here's the kicker, Glenn. Here's the kicker. The only way you can get remdesivir is to actually go to a hospital or healthcare facility and have it administered you, usually by injection there. They self-reported that their drug stops people from having to be hospitalized for COVID, but it's a drug you have to go to the hospital in order to get. And yet this is a joke. They lie about this stuff all the time, and then the treatment that actually works, it was called Regeneron when they gave it to President Bush or President Trump at this time last year to get him out of the hospital. But now it's known as the monoclonal antibodies. There's several different manufacturers. Ask your audience. If you want to know why I'm not celebrating the Merck announcement today, let me respond to your question with a question. How many commercials since last November after Regeneron, monoclonal, saved President Trump's life and got him out of the hospital and then was made available a month later for the country? How many commercials have you seen on TV in the last 10 months for monoclonal antibodies? How many of you even knew they existed until Ron DeSantis started making them portable around the state of Florida? And then after they saved a bunch of lives, and they start doing this in your state of Texas now the Biden administration wants to ration it. How many of you even knew what this was? And how many of you have seen it promoted even though it actually works? That's why I'm not celebrating. There's something has smelled rotten in the state of Denmark, Glenn, from day one, from the day that the Imperial College survey came out, March 16th of last year, till now. This thing stinks to high heaven, brother. I promise you.
Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate the work that you have done on this, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, man. God bless.
God bless. Rough greens. I want to read what Lawrence wrote in about his dog's experience with rough greens. He said, I bought my dog many different kinds of supplements over the years. She would eat a little bit of it, but not very much. In general, she just kind of shied away from it. But when it comes to rough greens, not only will she ask you, because I know you read and you've been studying this and going back and forth, so you know the arguments against what Steve just said. And in all fairness, I'd love to hear the other side reasonable. So can you, for instance, United States with over 75% of adults receiving at least one dose of vaccine saw a 324% increase in cases. Vermont, the most vaccinated state in America, trending towards setting all-time record in cases. At this time the essay was written, despite the fact that it's out of season. The UAE, second most fully vaccinated country in the world, saw 11% increases in cases. How would you, what would be your response? Because I don't think he's saying it's causing it. He's just saying it's ineffective.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think a lot of it he pointed to is, the Delta variant seems to be a lot more transmissible and has caused outbreaks. I mean, UAE is mainly using Chinese vaccines, so that's a little bit different than our situation. But still, I think you look at there's different ways to look at it. I think if you look at it as, people look at, if you want to say there's that debate he mentioned there between he's calling it a therapeutic or a vaccine, and it's an interesting point in that we call it the flu vaccine, but obviously it does not stop every incidence of the flu. And the same thing I think here applies. They're not 100%. They were about 90% in the initial trials, as you mentioned. Sure. The numbers looked pretty good. I would say it looks like they're a little bit less effective against Delta. The thing that's promising about mRNA technology is they can quickly come up with new vaccines against the new variants. Now, of course, the process for that to actually happen is difficult because the thing winds up being the dominant variant before it can get approved. As Steve points out, if you get on that train, if it's something where this is the new flu vaccine, right, where you're going to be needing a new one every year for the new variant, that could be where this ends. I mean, I think the idea of this ending is
I always thought
endemic.
it would end.
Yeah, I mean, you hope, right? I mean, we've had SARS and MERS. This didn't happen with,
right?
This one, it may very well. It does seem like this is where this is going to end. This is going to be part of our lives forever, which I think is the most important thing for everybody to realize. At some point, you get to a position where you need to just run your society and realize that there's endemic risk, and everyone needs to kind of measure that for themselves.
But I think that's the problem with the flu vaccine. It's not mandated, but every old person I know gets the flu vaccine because they're more likely to die from it.
It's important.
It's very important.
About half the country gets
right.
it. Yeah.
But you're not. It's not mandatory.
And you know me. I am much more positive, I think, on the vaccines than a lot of conservatives as far as their effectiveness and even how they're working today. When you look at the data and you break it down by age and you break it down by individuals, you find better results than you do from 50,000 feet. But the point here is that it should never be mandated. And we mentioned this the other day. 6 years after the vaccine, the Salk polio vaccine came out, 6 years we were at 54% vaccinated.
Right.
The fact that we're at 2/3 of adults are fully vaccinated, and most importantly, let's be honest, 93.6% of elderly people have at least had one shot. 93.6%. That's higher, Glenn, than every one of the childhood vaccines. Like we're talking about like the measles vaccine or the MMR vaccine or chickenpox vaccine that everyone gets when they're like 2.
Yeah.
That's a higher percentage for the most vulnerable. I don't know what we thought was going to happen here. There's going to be people who don't want to take it. At this point, it's available to them if they want to take it. If they think ivermectin is better, let them take that. And everyone can adjust on their own risk, including, by the way, people who want to mandate this. There are effective masks like N95 masks they could be wearing and not have to depend on everyone they hate to take the vaccine or anything else. There's options here.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Everywhere you turn, the world is, world is turning to new technology and new ways of doing things. Let me tell you about RecTech. This is, if you look at it, you're like, wow, that's a really nice grill. And then you lift up the hood of it and you're like, holy cow, this thing is heavy. It's really made to last. And then you cook on it. And when you cook on it, you can bake on it, you can grill on it, you can smoke on it. It's amazing. Then you add in the smart grill technology. Now you don't even have to stand outside and check it all the time, watch the thermometer that never seems to work on the hood. This is all digital, and it's all on your smartphone or your device, whatever. It's incredibly easy. It will last forever. I just don't think there's anything on the market that even compares. Follow RecTech, RecTeq, RecTech with a Q at the end. Find them right now and check in. If you're looking for a new smoker or griller, this is the best of the best. RecTech, RecTeq.com.
Head over to blazetv.com/Glenn. The promo code is Glenn. You'll get $10 off your subscription.
Another host from Blaze TV, the host of Slightly Offensive and co-host of You Are Here, Elijah Schaefer, joins us now. I brought you in on because I wanted to ask you something because you have a degree in biology or what is it?
Yeah, molecular biology, some grad school, but I was smart and I left that field to do this. I saw what was coming. I knew it. I knew it was coming, that they were going to start using the weird woke politics and the sciences, stop caring about things like objectivity and discipline, and starting to look at science as more of an art.
That's good. And so you have the knowledge of, for instance, the masks, as Stu just said. You want to stop it. You want to make sure you're safe and you're not spreading. Then get an N95 mask, and then you don't have to worry about what everybody else is doing. You get an N95 mask, and that pretty much will stop anything that is coming through. That's your best shot on a mask. The rest of them are ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. And it's kind of crazy, too, because obviously we're talking about with the ban that just happened. I just said what's on the box of these cloth masks, these paper masks, especially the homemade masks are the one that make me laugh the most.
Yeah.
Just get a piece of cloth, tie it around your face, and COVID will stay away, as if it's like the 5-second rule, where as long as the food's not on the ground for 5 seconds, the bacteria can't hit it. If you have anything over your face, you block all pathogens. If only we knew that for the last several thousand years, and no one would have died.
Yeah. So the idea of these vaccine mandates, I don't know if you heard this, today or yesterday it was announced that the Federation of Teachers in New York are now suing because they say they should not be mandated for teachers. It's their own word. It's unconstitutional.
In New York.
In New York. The teachers in New York are suing because they say they shouldn't have to be forced to be vaccinated.
Well, of course not. I mean,
I know. It's the first thing about the vaccine that I've agreed with the teachers unions on.
I didn't even know teachers unions were allowed to make logical sense today. I thought that was like illegal in 2014 or something.
Right, yeah. And they're going to use this more and more to curb people's rights. I mean, a woman who was pregnant quite a ways along in her pregnancy. She was a nurse. She refused to get the vaccine because of the baby. Didn't matter. She was fired. She's now suing. All of these things where you're just losing access to a job or a place is only going to get worse.
Yeah, and I just spoke to another comedian named Lila Hart. She has spina bifida, which is a sort of a deformative issue, and she actually has a blood clotting disorder and is unable to take the vaccines. And so not only is this someone with a disability, this is a woman, right? This is, for years, all we've heard about is fighting for the disabled, fighting for women. And she's a pretty popular comedian. I knew about her before I met her. She's been barred from almost every single comedy house and club. She even had to move from L.A. because she couldn't work anymore because they wouldn't let her in. And she told me, she goes, and you know that they don't even believe in these mandates because the bouncer said, Lila, to her, why didn't you just bring me a fake vaccine card and we would have let you in? And she was saying, like, look, all these people that are even championing it and saying it's a good thing, when it push comes to shove, they don't even believe that this is necessary.
There's a good chunk of people, too, that are working at these places that don't want to be involved in enforcing vaccine mandates. That's not their job. It's not why they went to get hired there. And now they're stuck in this impossible position in between people who want to be able to go into an establishment and the actual business who wants them in the establishment many times. But they're forced by the government to do other things. I mean, that's just nuts. It's a crazy way of doing business.
So I've been having a debate with myself and with Bill O'Reilly, and I think Stu and I are on the same page with Joe Biden. We think he's senile. We think he's going. But he's there enough to make these decisions. These are not senile decisions. These are decisions he's making, and he knows he's making them. But there also is this weird ice cream thing with him. He's constantly having ice cream. They're constantly at ice cream stores. And I heard this and I thought, who would know if this is true is Elijah. So ice cream is a sign of possible dementia if you're craving it and you're his age?
Yeah, so there's actually two sides of this that are really interesting, and I want to keep it very simple, assuming that you know nothing about dementia and probably know a lot about ice cream.
Yeah, I know a lot about ice cream.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But essentially when it comes to dementia, right, there's a few different types. Like there's vascular dementia, there's frontotemporal dementia, and Alzheimer's. There's different types of these degenerations in the brain. This has to do with buildup of things like plaques and different types of neurotoxicity. So the point of the matter is that dementia has two problems. There's the biological element, which obviously could be fought with medicine like Prozac or different types of medications. And then there's the behavioral side of it, which is that as you begin to get older in age and are unable to process information, you can start to get confused, disoriented, because you lose the ability to cope with the stress of life, right? A lot of people, when you're younger, you may drink a lot, you may get angry, you may, I don't know, hopefully you don't do anything too destructive, you may go running. As you get older, you lose that ability to cope and the stress builds. And so this is why he doesn't take questions from reporters, because when there's an influx of stimuli, especially from things that you're not prepared for, it can lead you to a state of disorientation, hallucination, and confusion, which is why they always stop the questions, because he needs to compose himself.
Would it also lead to anger?
Oh, yeah. One of the things, too, is if you see him shuffling around and moving around and snapping, is usually one of the main signs is snapping and getting kind of lost, confused, and shuffling around. And you see him with his mask. These are very typical signs of not only early onset, but total onset of dementia. Specifically, I think he has the FTD, the frontotemporal, because, again, with the ice cream, where it comes in is that one of the ways, without using drugs or medication, that you can treat dementia and that you can help satiate it is by bringing a coping mechanism, a positive coping mechanism that might bring both dopamine release and joy to the individual, and also connect them back to earlier, simpler times.
I got to tell you, dementia has never seemed more appealing to me than right now.
Hey, well, you know what? But I'm saying this is why. So this is just the connotative form of it. Of a very simple way to help people is to give them the ice cream because it's sweet. And honestly, with the FTD, is you have a natural craving usually for sugars. Ice cream's readily available. It doesn't look suspicious, like putting your hands in a full cake and just eating it. Right. Although we've all been there. We've all been there. So there's that. But also on the side of things, there's a lot of new research, biological research, that shows a direct link between consuming certain types of fermented dairy products, including ice cream, that contain hydrogesterol and oleamide and different fatty acids in preventing the degeneration of the brain, especially what's called microglial inflammation.
My brain will live forever.
Yeah, no, and that's why, but honestly, Nancy Pelosi, if you notice with a lot of these politicians who are very old, I mean, you look at the filings for these people, look at how much ice cream they spend on themselves and their older donors and people in their cabinet. It doesn't make sense. It's $10,000+.
Couldn't it just be that people really like ice cream?
Well, hopefully that's true. If you're an American, you better be a patriot, love your country, and also like ice cream.
Right? You know, the weird thing is that was Martha Washington's attack. She did not want George to run for a second term. And so the biggest attacks came from his own mother. And the one that she thought had real sticking power was, he is so irresponsible with money. You have no idea what this man spends a year on ice cream.
Well,
wow.
My wife might say the same thing about me.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm going to say that it's actually interesting, though, that specifically in one study in Japan, right, there was a link between rice consumption and actual neurodegenerative toxicity, which means that it actually prevents your brain from being healthy, but a direct link between people who consumed a lot of dairy and mental health, psychological health, showing a direct connection. That's how it started, between dairy products and preventing aging in the brain. And so what's really interesting is that the ice cream, because it's readily available and it's delicious, basically the study was saying is that you could have low-sugared, partially fermented yogurt or ice cream as the way to try to prevent the onset and development of dementia. And I don't know about you, but when it comes, I mean, yogurt's okay, but if you're going to offer me a spoonful of partially fermented yogurt or a nice scoop of Ben & Jerry's, I know where I'm going with.
I'll go for the fermented, even really moldy yogurt over Ben & Jerry's, but that's for different reasons.
The communist ice cream.
One other question on dementia. I have read and seen photos of the president. For instance, there's this amazing photo of him in the Oval Office, down on his knees in front of a woman, kissing her hand, because I think it was that she had a lot of children, and he was like, "Oh, you are, you women that do this are so, you should be, praised." And he actually got down on his knees and kissed her hand, and then you see other things where he will stop in the middle of a conference and he will just talk to little kids, and he'll kind of baby talk with them a little bit. And the point of this article was that one of the signs of dementia is you no longer know what's appropriate and inappropriate. And so you will you'll do things that are so clearly inappropriate for any, adult. But you will do the things like he's doing. Like the president should know, you never get down on your knees in the Oval Office unless you're praying.
I think most men, when it comes to meeting new women, don't get on your knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a great idea.
In general.
Yeah. I mean, and so he does a lot of these weird things. And I know you're not a doctor, but
No, yeah.
but
this is the point, actually. It's like, you don't have to be a doctor, and I want to, some of your audience would know this. Obviously, there's a similar type of lack of social cue with certain forms of autism. You don't have to be a doctor. If you have an autistic child, or you yourself are autistic,
or Peter Thiel.
Yeah, you will come out and say, hey, look, there's a reason why we have these diagnoses is because, somebody may feel like, if I'm coming onto them, that could be considered assault or inappropriate. But once you find out, let's say somebody, touches you inappropriately or something, you go, hey, they have a certain form of autism, they don't understand social cues, that allows us in society to know how to function and relate to that person, because we go, oh, I'll be patient. Sure. I'll teach them, and I will understand where they're coming from. That's why with Joe Biden and dementia, we have that diagnosis with people, because you go, oh, okay, yeah, this guy shouldn't be president. And also, if this old man gets on his knees and kisses my hand, I shouldn't freak out because, he probably has frontotemporal dementia. And I understand that this kind of behavior is normal for people with this degeneration.
Can he have that and still be very, very lucid and making decisions at times?
No, there's no way, because it's called I think it's called sundown syndrome, which is why he goes to bed so early. Is like you actually find yourself getting tired early, and you can't handle, like I mentioned earlier, the introduction of new stimuli, because you can't process things quickly. So basically every job descriptor for the president that you need, fast reaction skills, ability to process complex information, the ability to stay up long hours, these basic tenets that would scare most people away from the job are all of the qualifications and skills that Joe Biden cannot physically, this is not just something we can teach him, cannot physically, psychologically, or emotionally undertake if the diagnosis of dementia is real. And I do not believe, and I'm not a medical doctor, but just like I don't need a degree to tell when someone has autism or something's a little bit off, you do not need to have a medical degree to look at this man and go, this man needs help. He needs love. He needs care. He needs to enjoy this last, hopefully decades of his life. We hope that he has a long-lasting life with his family. But being president of the United States is not something he's cognitively capable of doing.
Elijah Schaffer from You Are Here on Blaze TV. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
being
guys.
On the program. Appreciate it. Let me tell you about CarShield. Warranties are designed